item, please.
Item 2, ordinance designating 900 Ennis Avenue as a landmark under Planning Code Article 10 and adopting General Planning Code Section 101.1B and environmental findings.
All right, thank you. This is a continuance from last week, 2 weeks ago. And so basically, the cottage at 900 Ennis has stood at the corner of Ennis and Griffith for well over 100 years. It has been home to several generations of shipwrights and serves as one of the few physical reminders of India Basin's wooden boat building era. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the shoreline of Bayview Hunters Point played a vital role in the regional economy as host to unique scow building industry. The scow schooners built in the boatyards of the India Basin carried people and goods throughout the Bay Area and the Delta, providing reliable transportation for a growing industry. The cottage itself is a rare example of this small Victorian-era workers' cottage in San Francisco. The structure was designed with a unique blend of late 19th century Gothic influences. The landmarking of the shipwright's cottage provides an exciting opportunity to save a piece of San Francisco's maritime industrial history. So we would, therefore, I think we can go to, we had somebody here from the planning department, and if she's here, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tara Sullivan-Lenane, Planning Department staff. As you did mention, the item is to designate 900 Ennis Avenue as an individual landmark pursuant to Article 10 of our Planning Code. This item was continued from 2 weeks ago due to noticing issues. At the Landmarks Board hearing on May 4th, 2005, the Board unanimously voted to recommend approval of this site as an individual landmark. 900 Ennis is a small wood frame cottage located at the corner of Ennis and Griffith Streets. Designed in a simple Italianate style, the house was constructed to house shipwrights employed in nearby boatyards. The Landmarks Board found 900 Ennis to be eligible under two criterion. Criterion A for events, for the building's association with events in its relationship with the marine cargo history and the shipwright community that settled in India Basin, and under criterion C for architecture, that the building embodies the distinctive characteristics of workman vernacular architecture, which includes traits of the Italianate Victorian details. 900 Ennis tells the story about the growth and evolution of the India Basin neighborhood as a center for boatyard building from the 1870s to the 1930s. The present structure of 900 Ennis reflects both the evolution of the neighborhood and the style of workman vernacular architecture that was dominant in the early years of San Francisco's maritime history. I'm available to answer any other questions that you have.
Thank you. Supervisor.
Are you prepared to tell us just a few general things about the site itself, apart from the structure, like how big it is, what else is there? Do you have a picture of it? I'm just curious. I know a fair amount now about the cottage, but I'm not sure what else is there surrounding it.
I don't have detailed specifics as to the overall acreage of the parcel. I do know that it is a small cottage that is located at the corner of Ennis and Griffith. The current owner is here. It's connected to a larger parcel. There are several parcels of open space surrounding it. It is a few blocks or block in from the water. Essentially, it is the cottage and a lot of open space. I can answer.
Half an acre, quarter acre, an acre. It's not more than a couple acres.
Definitely more than a couple acres. It's a very large parcel. But again, the owner is here and he can answer the specifics for you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Let me. Thank you very much. I have two amendments that I should have mentioned before that. One is wherever there's a phrase Hunters Point School appears in the ordinance, we will replace it with Shipwrights Cottage. The Hunters Point School terminology was based on older information that was used prior to much more extensive research that was compiled in the structure. And the second amendment, the board also recognizes that the owner of the 900 Ennis site and surrounding parcels is formulating concepts for a mixed-income regional residential project. The board continues to support the development of affordable housing, both citywide and in the Bayview Hunters Point district. Given the number of parcels controlled by the 900 Ennis owner and the relatively small area on one lot occupied by the Shipwrights Cottage, there will be development opportunities for the remainder of the site, subject to the land controls and design standards established through the Hunters Point Shoreline Neighborhood Planning process. And so that would also be an amendment that would be added to the clauses. Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, I do have a map of the area and the parcels, if I could show it for Supervisor Sandoval. A bit hard to read on the overhead. 900 Innis is located right here at this little parcel. All the other parcels highlighted in green are, including some underwater parcels, are owned by the same project sponsor. However, the parcel that would be designated an individual landmark pursuant to Article 10 is solely this corner parcel right here.
Did I understand you correctly? You said that all the other parcels, including the underwater parcels, are owned by the project sponsor?
There are some apparently underwater parcels located right here, which are owned by the project sponsor as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Then I will start with Randy Shaw. Randy Shaw is the owner of the property, new owner of the property.
Thank you, Supervisors. Randy Shaw, Executive Director of the Tenderloin Housing Clinic, which owns the property. I wish I owned the property personally, but our organization owns it. I'd like to just address some history for the crowd here. We became owners of this property on December 31st, 2007, and really paid, just knew we became owners, was told nothing was happening on the site for some time, so just there were files we never looked at. I happened to hear from, on March 10th from Mr. Lau, Supervisor Maxwell's clerk, that there was going to be the landmark process was going to move forward. And all I've been seeking at that time, meeting with the Indian Basin Historical Association and meeting with Supervisor Maxwell's aides, was just to get enough time to get up to speed on the issues. We've never opposed landmarking. We have no problem with landmarking. We needed to get enough facts so we understood how landmarking would affect our overall plans for the project. Because what we are trying to do on the site is something which really is unique. Despite all of the housing plan for Bayview Hunters Point, I'm not aware of another project which has the ability to specifically target affordable housing to existing Bayview residents, circumventing the lottery, which affects publicly funded projects, or the inclusionary law. And so we looked at being able to give as many as 35% of the units outside of the lottery system, keep people in Bayview Hunters Point who've had to move to Antioch or move to Pittsburgh or Daly City to afford housing. They could be able to stay in the community and build the institutions and make Bayview Hunters Point a better place. So all we've tried to do in the last month since this first came up is to try to get a recognition that there is an impact when you take a portion of the site that is currently slated to be built on that you no longer can build on. And the implication of keeping the cottage in its current site would eliminate about 12 units and increase construction costs by about $500,000. And we just want to be aware that that is an impact that we would want down the line as we go through this process, and some of you will be on the board, some of you are moving on, to recognize that if we do keep it in this location that we get some density or height or some other methods to protect the affordable housing on the site. I mean, that's been what it's always been about. We're proud to own this landmark. We hope we can work with the community to make it a maritime museum. We think it's an excellent opportunity. I've read all the documents now about the history that you started to give a little preamble about. But we want to work with the community on this and to make this a successful project. I would like to show a couple pictures, Supervisor Sandoval, just because you mentioned it's a beautiful site. Does this work? If I do this? I mean, we're talking about affordable housing to be right on the water, which is pretty rare to get an unobstructed bay view. Here is the site, the portion of the site that kind of would be built on. This is all there is some water area, but you can see there's a heck of a lot of surface ground area that can be built on. The plans were submitted by the former owner in February 2005 for 170 units. They were revised to be 208 units in 2007. So there have been detailed, plans for this site, and we just hope we can work with the community to have a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
All right, Bob Bowers, and Byron Griffin.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Bowers. I live at the Galvin Apartments. Getting to the Galvin's Apartments, which is a low-income apartment building with a Tenderloin Housing Clinic, it took me 24 years of SRO living. And this is the first time since September of October 6th I had a chance to have an apartment, and I'm really, really pleased with it. I'm growing with it. If Tenderloin Housing Clinic has a chance for this opportunity in Bayview, I think they'll do a great job for low-income people. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Byron Griffin. I live in the Galvin Apartments, and I am very satisfied with living there. And thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Tony Wilson? Tony Wilson? No? Okay. Then Aaron Farrell? Brian Scott?
Hi, thanks for having us again. As you know, I'm a volunteer at the India Basin Neighborhood Association, and 2 weeks ago I told you about the hundreds of hours that I've spent researching the neighborhood in 900 Innis and learning about preservation. I showed you records, the resources that I use, a long list of resources to show the due diligence that we've done in our research, and I also talked about the guidance that I had from the planning department and preservation specialists in the community and from the landmarks board. And we did finalize that research a couple of years ago. The documentation does show that 900 Innis is a dwelling that was for shipwrights and shipwright families. Remember that this is about landmarking. This is not about affordable housing at this hearing. This lot, the question came up, how big is this lot? The lot is 25 by 75 feet that the property is located on. And records state that the building is 130 years old, more than twice the needed requirement for landmarking. And during the period of historical significance, 1875 to 1925, every single U.S. census shows that wooden boat builders were living in that building. I think it's important to remember that we are here to talk about landmarking a building that recognizes the importance of our working class neighborhood and the neighbors that settled that area. And I just want to say that it's important to remember why we're here and that we hope that this process moves forward. We've proven it qualifies for landmarking under 2 different criteria. We have support from constituents within the neighborhood and throughout the city. And we really want the building to be landmarked and be part of a neighborhood. It goes with the mission of the India Basin Neighborhood Association to preserve our maritime history, and we hope that you as supervisors will support the neighbors. Thank you.
Byron Scott, Brian, and then Raleigh, Tori Freeman. And if you hear your name, if you could just stand up, please, and come forward, it'll make it move a lot faster. And then Julie Lane.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Stott. I moved to India Basin in 1996, and I've lived and voted there, never missed a time. I moved there from Marin County, and I don't think I'd want to live anywhere else. The historic value of India Basin is unbelievable. In 2005, the Landmarks Board unanimously approved landmarking 900 Innis, and they designated it as landmark number 250. And I think that if you went by, I'm sure that you may have seen 900 Innis. It's in pretty bad repair right now. It needs a lot of repair, but you can tell it just was built in 1875. It's just an old structure. To move it, I think, would lose its whole historical value. So if we could just landmark it and just create and keep the historic value alive in that area. This is the very last workers' cottage on the waterfront in San Francisco. So if we were to lose this, I think that we can't ever share this kind of past generational history with our future generations. There is a building on Cesar Chavez Street up towards, at the very end, near Douglas, I believe, that is an exact, it's been a restored building exactly like 900 Ennis. And if you go by there, I can get the address for you. It's absolutely spectacular restored of the building. So I think today you're going to hear a lot of people say that it's not worthy to keep. It looks like a wreck. It's a shack. But with just a little bit of work, I think it's going to really be a sensational landmark for the city of San Francisco.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Raleigh?
Hello, my name is Raleigh. Thank you. I'm a neighbor of India Basin. Also on the IBNA board. And one of the criteria for a building to be landmarked is that the property be associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. The working class families who lived at 900 Ennis built and operated scow schooners, vital ships for the economy of San Francisco, Northern California, and beyond. We put together this short video to give you a snapshot of the building and its part in the city's development, culture, and history.
Well, can you go forward and maybe we can catch up? Do you? Raleigh, can you continue and then maybe somebody else can show those? Can you?
Sure. I was just going to present the video next.
Oh, okay. All right, well then why don't you, yeah.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Tori Freeman. While they're working on that, I want to ask everybody who is here in support of 900 Ennis to please stand up behind me. As you can see, we've all been working really hard to save this building, and many of our, thank you. You can sit down. Many of our supporters could not be here today because it is a working class neighborhood and we are working people. We also have over 550 signatures supporting this effort and tons of support letters and professionals in the Historical Society who support us. So thank you for your support, and hopefully you can see the video again. But please remember that all the people who were here 2 weeks ago, some of them couldn't be here, but thank you again for your support. All right,
My name is Julie Lane, and I was also going to present a short video showing our support throughout the neighborhood. I will say that I, as a former neighbor in India Basin, I have since moved to the Mission, but I have also since had a child in the whole process of trying to get this building landmarked. And I would like nothing more than to have my child see that building as it should be, restored and as a part of that neighborhood where it's had such a historical impact on the whole Bay Area. Thank you very much.
All right, Taisha Kelly, Acorn, Sabrina Hall from Acorn, Dale Ray Smith, Acorn, and Stormy Henry, Acorn. You all are next.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Hall, and I'm from Acorn. I feel that we need affordable housing at this site, and I don't think this place should be marked as a landmark designation. A lot of us out here in San Francisco, we've been on Housing Authority waiting lists for years, 6, 7 years, and that's a lot of space right there, and that could help us out with our future families. Our kids are our future. That's a historical landmark, as far as I'm concerned. We need all that space for housing, and that's basically why I'm here saying this. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Stormy Henry. I'm a resident in Bayview, and Alice Griffith. And I don't want to disrespect history by saying that the landmark should not remain there. I think it should be a memento. Something should be honored there. The homes that be put there should be an honor to the people who worked in the building. Everybody who worked there was pretty much a family person. They worked to provide for their family. So I'm not really in recognition of putting down the site, but maybe if we build homes there and have some of the homes to represent the people who worked at the basin and provide jobs for the community by building those homes. I think that's what the people who really worked at 1900 Ennis stood for. They stood for families. They were working people. They weren't to tear down the community. And for it to not be used for good space means that it kind of like takes from the meaning of the people who work from there. So I would just appreciate it if everyone would just kind of like come together in agreements of something in the memento of them and not spending money to restore a building that will not be used fully for families and homes and educational purposes.
Stormy, let me just say it's not an either or. It's and. Both, there's enough to accommodate both.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see happen, Sophie Maxwell.
And that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's not one or the other. It's both.
I would like to see both things happen, coming together in agreements that the homes will come into memorial and memento of 1900 Ennis.
And that's a great attitude, and I think that's what we've been talking about, that they could really work off each other.
Well, just know that the Bayview and Alice Griffith, they have our support.
Thank you. I have Sabrina Hall. Dale, come on up, Dale.
Thank you. Pleasure being here today.
Thank you.
You know, I always like to share with people that although I was out there 25 years smoking crack, I got 6 years clean today, and I've learned to stand for something. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. And I truly believe in what they're saying right now as far as the developer making this happen. And you're right. There's power in unity. We all need to be a link in the chain. We need to handle our business. We just little hot dogs down here. I know y'all like the big hot dogs up here, but you know what? We all could be heroes in the neighborhood, in the communities. Everybody needs to step up to the plate and do these things with the developer, because these kids need this. Instead of these kids hanging on corners, standing on the corner selling that poison, we all could be a link in the chain. Let it be a domino effect. God bless y'all.
All right, Sabrina Hall. Is Sabrina Hall here? No? All right, then Steve Collier, Joe Boss, Tim Colon, Executive Director of Housing Coalition. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Steve Collier. You all may know I am an employee of the Tenderloin Housing Clinic. I've been a staff attorney there for over 20 years. But what you may not know is I am also a proud owner of a historic landmark in San Francisco. I think it's number 175. And I come to you from that perspective. It is difficult to own a landmark if you can't keep it up. And this particular landmark, or 900 Ennis, this particular property that is being targeted for landmark status, you should go look at it. It really is in need of a tremendous amount of work. It is, I mean, it is by any consideration, if it wasn't for this particular status, it would be torn down. I mean, it's practically falling down as it is. And so we have to look at a way, if we're going to preserve its landmark status, to make the project work. And if we're talking about losing up to 12 units of affordable housing, as you all know, building affordable housing, there's not a lot of leftover money. Usually isn't any leftover money. The housing clinic was fortunate enough to get this site donated, which is making it possible to be affordable. So I think flexibility in the process would go a long way towards permitting the landmark status to be put on this cottage, but not necessarily destroy the ability to do the project. And I think moving the cottage could be within the site that's currently owned by the housing clinic, could go a long way towards making it more affordable. I mean, we're not talking about moving it to Bernal or someplace else. We're talking about moving it, if anything, closer to the water, and these were shipbuilders who worked right on the water, right there. So I don't think there's anything that would detract from its historical stature to have the cottage moved to some other location where it could be more fittingly used as a museum or some memento for that shipbuilding era, and yet have a wonderful, vibrant project that can survive. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. And then we have Tim Cullen, and then Archie Green, and Bruce Allison, Cheryl Schultz.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Joe Boss. I'm here representing the Dogpatch Neighborhood Association. You've seen me before. I never wear badges, but I really had to today. 900 Innes is not just a building that can be moved or whatever. It is so important in moving the entire southern waterfront and the Bayview community into the ability to recognize it as something that was created, some parts of it that need to be preserved, and so forth. Randy Shaw over the years has taught me quite a bit about the importance of affordability. And I'm hoping that we can teach Randy Shaw a little bit about the importance of neighborhood, of history, and so forth. We worked with PG&E, we being the Innes folks, and got a grant and did historic survey work that should have been done by the city's planning department. And in city's planning department is slowly catching up on doing surveys. However, it's not like 900 is all of a sudden showed up on the scene. For years, we've been trying to get it recognized. For a living, I do outreach and strategy with developers. 900 Minnesota Street is an adaptive reuse of a historic building in a historic district, and it is very well received by the historic people who follow history of buildings. It's very, very well received by the people who live in Dogpatch. The point is that if it's done properly, it is not a hindrance. It actually adds to the value of a project. As far as the condition of the building, I'm quite sure I could probably talk Local 22 into helping put it back in order. I don't know if I could do the same thing with the RBA, but I will try. So I really sincerely hope that the building stays where it is. The idea that this is going to knock out, I think it was 12 units. I don't know what the density we're talking about, even if it was 25 by 100, 2,500 square feet. I don't get the math of the loss of units. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just suggest, if I may, that for anyone here who has a small child, that we might let them speak if they want to, because of the inconvenience.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Tim Colin, Executive Director of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. And I'm wondering if there's not a lot of violent agreement in the room today around this. You've got two worthy goals that are absolutely a part of the city's conversation on land use every day: historic preservation and housing, in particular affordable housing. I come from the perspective of trying to find an answer to the crushing imperative of finding more housing and more affordable housing for our people here. On the other hand, we strongly believe in historic preservation and have added language to our guidelines to try and inform our decisions and how to strengthen it. I think it falls to you to figure out a solution to this, is to take the larger perspective. You've got proponents on two rather narrow interests, preservation and affordable housing. There has to be a solution that could be reached. If it involves moving the building that a short distance away, why not? But I would ask that you please not do anything that would make a project infeasible that's going to deliver the maximum amount of housing to the citizens there. Thank you.
All right, if there is anybody here After the people that have called, Bruce, I called you. And if you'd like to speak and you have a small child, please come up.
I was waiting if any. Bruce Allison, Poor Magazine. I'm in favor of keeping the building, but maybe moving it. That be more affordable housing on the area. And when you move it closer to the waterfront, it'd be more realistic that shipwrights actually lived there from the 1700s to about the 30s. Thank you very much.
All right, Archie Green, then Cheryl Schultz, Walter, that's all I have, Dan Huff, Jill Fox.
Supervisor, I'm honored to be here. Just to identify myself, I'm a resident of San Francisco. I'm 91 years old, and I actually worked as a boat builder at Brewer and Seymour Yard before World War II, before I went into the Navy. So I'm probably one of the only workers alive who actually worked as a shipwright and boat builder in the Hunters Point area. And I know the trade intimately, and I don't want to address the problem, the conflict that you've had, because I have a different perspective. That San Francisco is known as a world, or has been known as a world port. And much of our significance and greatness as a city came because we had a sheltered harbor where boats could be built and ships could be built right until World War II. And there is no monument, there is no memory of shipbuilding in San Francisco. And that overlook is negative, and our craft and this tradition should be preserved and maintained, if only to remind young people growing up what the city stood for. So I would speak in favor of preserving the name, actually, and the cottage and the location. The only thing that's comparable is in Golden Gate Park, where the two windmills, the old one and the one that's being rebuilt now, there's a millwright's cottage. It's the only reminder in San Francisco of people who physically believed in and built the city. And if we had the shipwright's cottage preserved as a site, it would attract people who had some feeling for the history of our wonderful city. Thank you very much.
And your name again?
Pardon?
Your name again?
My name, Archie Green.
Archie Green. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Green.
Honor to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Hard act to follow. I
Yes.
mean, wow. We've got to preserve that kind of history, if you ask me. My name is Cheryl Schultz, and I am a member of the Preservation Consortium, the California Historical Society, San Francisco Architectural Heritage, and the Victorian Alliance. And I'm here today to ask you to grant landmark status to the Shipwrights Cottage at 900 Innes. I'm actually kind of confused by what the new owner said. I really don't understand why this landmarking would sort of hurt the whole community. He's still going to get his low-income housing. He's only going to lose 12 units, and he's being handed a basic gold mine. Landmarking this Shipwrights Cottage is only going to, down the road, be good business sense. It's going to attract people to the area, and it's going to make him look great. So I'm really unsure of what he was saying, or if he's just not thinking forward ahead enough. I mean, I think it really is a win-win for everybody in the area. You're going to get your low-income housing, and you're going to be able to keep a landmark in this area. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for this area that needs it, and it needs the low-income housing. I think the loss of 12 units is something very minimal to have a landmark here. Thank you.
Excuse me, could you hand her that card, I think. Thank you. All right. Walter, and then Dan Huff, Joe Fox, Chris Blank.
Good afternoon, Land Use and Economics Committee. I'm Walter Paulson. And way back when, in 1970, we used to go treasure hunting at some of these schools. We had metal detectors, my mother and I. We used to like to find historic items at some of these schools. And I'll show you this old book I have. It's from 1970-71, Directory of San Francisco Unified School District book. Very old. It's hard to find. And here's in here, it's Hunters Point 2 school. Is that the school, or is that gone now? I'm not sure if that's. This is on this address is on Kiaska Road near Southridge Road. I don't know, but anyway, the thing is, in this book, a lot of the school names have been changed, and they're or else they're no longer there anymore, and so it's sort of good to preserve a landmark, you know, because once it's gone forever, you know, and if landmarks don't last forever, tell me what's forever for. So I think you should preserve these some of these schools, and especially this one. It's 130 years old. Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Bye.
Supervisors, Madam Chair, my name is Dan Huff. I'm a representative from Carpenters Local 2236. I had the pleasure of appearing in support of this item and the landmarking at the previous session. And I come before you again to reiterate our support and our appreciation of what this neighborhood has done to come together and to try to do all the hard work that they've done to succeed in landmarking this site. And I emphasize the term site. There has been some discussion today about granting status but moving the cottage, and I don't understand. You know, to me, a landmark site is all about where it sits and where the history took place. So I just bring that out as a point. My friend Archie Green here is probably the last shipwright to work in those small yards. We still do have activity in San Francisco. They're at the 20th Street site. We do have what are called shipwrights, but we don't have the type of work, obviously, as was that took place at the site that we're considering today. Anyway, on behalf of myself and on behalf of members like Archie Green and all of those shipwrights and their families out there, I just want to make the statement that this is a very, very important decision that you have before you, and I hope that you will take the vote to move this forward, and I would hope that the rest of the board would see the wisdom in granting this status. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Jill Fox. I've been a San Franciscan since 1975 and have lived in India Basin since 1992. I have been part of this all-volunteer effort for the landmarking of 900 Innis for more than 5 years when we started doing the research. It is very important as our community is growing in leaps and bounds. Within a half mile of the shipwright's house, on one side is the Hunter's View, which is currently under environmental impact report for 800 new units, including 267 public housing units and a variety of different affordability levels up to 800 units. A half a mile the other direction from the shipwright's house will be 1,200 to 1,600 new units in just the first portion by the gate of the Hunters Point shipyard. What is really important to those of us who are in the existing neighborhood is the the importance of keeping it a livable community. Housing is very important, but livability should be our key word. These old shipwrights and boatyards have been used in other parts of the country as the centerpiece of community building, of youth learning trades. In Virginia, there is a very, very similar project that was made into a landmark of an old boatyard. And then they turned it into a pre-apprenticeship program for carpenters to learn those old skills into this new century. And it's become a wonderful centerpiece of a community. And those are just some of the ideas that could happen in this landmark. The important thing is, as we welcome new community members to our neighborhood, where we are going to triple in residential density, that we maintain some of our history so that people know what came before them, so that they can help preserve it into the next century. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. All right, Christopher Plank, and then David Tornham.
Supervisors, my name is Christopher Verplank. I'm an architectural historian, and I've been volunteering with the India Basin Neighborhood Association for several years on this proposed landmarking. I gave you a whole song and dance last time, and I'm not going to repeat that again. I just wanted to address several comments that were brought up by the opposition to landmarking the cottage. First off, in regard to its structural condition, yes, it has been painted in several years, but a structural engineer by the name of Sven Thomason, former Heritage Board member, went through the building a couple of years ago, and he found the building had a relatively new concrete foundation. It's made out of redwood, which is amazingly resistant to termites and to seismic activity, etc. The building does need help, but it's not about to fall down. Two, regarding the location or potential relocation of the cottage. According to the National Register criteria, moving a historic structure should only be done if there's no other recourse. It's really not a good idea to move this building. First off, historically, the dwellings in India Basin were located on the street. They weren't located on the water. That's where the boatyards were. That's where the work took place. If you moved it from its present site to the water, you're really breaking the historic connection with the streetscape that it has. Also, it occupies a really small portion of this site. It's only on a 25 by 75-foot lot. There's room to build around it and accomplish the property owner's program. Third, this effort's been underway since 2004, well before the current property owner acquired the property. This effort to landmark this building is completely independent of this project, and I know you understand this, but I just wanted to emphasize that fact. And I urge you to support the landmarking. Thank you very much.
All right, that's the end of the cards. Oh, I've called you.
Hi, David Tornheim. I've gotten involved with preservation work more lately, helped work to save the Harding Theater, filed the appeal on behalf of Central City Progressives that has preserved the building so far, and working currently on UC Hall at UCSF. They want to tear this old historic building down there. And I've looked over the work that the people in the neighborhood have done on this, and I'm very impressed. I have an architectural historian who prepared a lengthy report showing the significance of this building. I see a number of different architectural groups have submitted letters of support. A number of individuals have too. The facts just make it clear this is one of the few. It looks to be the only building of its type remaining in the area. It needs to stay where it is in order to retain its architecture, its historical significance. And I think it's important too to the emphasis on history. It's like we're a country, we love progress and we're always trying to move forward, but sometimes in that progress we lose sight of what has happened before and the mistakes that have been made before, that this is the way the land could be used, this way or that way, whether it should be for transit, for autos, and so on. And when we start wiping out every little reminder of the past, we start to forget what's possible. I mean, some of these old buildings in the city, that they've lasted so long, reminds us that you can build beautiful things and they can last. All the current architecture I see, it's so bad. It's scary. So I would love to see all these beautiful buildings and historically significant buildings saved. Thank you.
If you'd like to speak and you haven't handed in a card, please come over on this side.
Hi, I'm Christine Ania. I'm the chair of the India Basin Neighborhood Association. Thank you for hearing from us again. I just wanted to clarify one point, and that is that the affordable housing plans are really not yet plans because they haven't gone through the community planning process that has been in the works for a long time. And I just want to emphasize that we do need neighborhood involvement in the planning. There's a lot that goes into planning a building development in any neighborhood. Bayview Hunters Point is the city's largest district and the district most in need of careful planning at this critical time of mass development and change. So as we plan, those of us who have been involved in the plan know that balanced use is very important. I think a landmark is a potential tourist attraction that could bring permanent jobs to our neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that is about 100% housing right now. Certainly the residents of public housing up on the hill on both sides of us, I think, would welcome the opportunity to be able to work and potentially enjoy other uses in their own neighborhood. So we do hope that you will keep landmark the 900 Innes property. It is very important that it stays where it is. That is what makes it historically significant. And I did want to say we are unable to show the videos, it appears, today, but they are both available at the India Basin neighborhood site. That's www.indiabasin.org. Thank you.
I'm Gigi Platt. I spoke 2 weeks ago and just wanted to comment on some of the points brought up today. First and foremost, this hearing should be about whether the building is or is not a landmark. I know it's, if I were the owner, I would want to make other kinds of comments, but the planning code does ask that you take into consideration only in this hearing whether it is or isn't a landmark. And other things can come later. I didn't realize that the community planning process had been so fully underway for so long, but I certainly hope that Mr. Shaw will avail himself of the opportunity to participate in that effort. The lot size is very small. To accommodate 12 units, I don't quite understand that. But I hope that Mr. Shaw will avail himself of the opportunity to hire the best in the business to help him plan the site so that the importance of this old shipbuilding area can survive while affordable housing is incorporated. I think that there's been a comment made about the condition of the building. I know that over all these years of studying the building, the previous owner did some things to the exterior that were not helpful. I think you all saw the model of 900 Innes in Supervisor Maxwell's office last fall, and can recognize how it was part of a different site at a different time, and probably also the architectural detailing that may not be there right this minute, but is certainly able to be recreated and replaced without harm to the building. I endorse Christopher Verplank's comments, and especially the comment about moving the building. It shouldn't be necessary and it shouldn't be done. The loss of site integrity would not be helpful. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for listening.
My name is Paul Hogarth, and I'm an employee of the Tenderloin Housing Clinic. I'd like to support a good win-win solution today for both sides, but I actually wasn't going to speak here during public comment, but I was moved. I was actually, I just have to say, I was offended by some of the public comment that was made. The notion that losing 12 units of affordable housing would be a small price to pay to landmark this building. I mean, the bottom line is anyone who's worked on affordable housing construction, development, trying to address the real epidemic, the real exodus of African-American working-class families from Bayview Hunters Point, to suggest that that is a small price to pay is frankly, as someone who's worked on affordable housing development, someone who lived in an old Victorian house, and I support the goals and the desires of preserving this neighborhood. As for wanting to fail to learn the lessons of history, I lived in Berkeley before, and I saw time and time again, whenever someone had a solution of trying to provide housing in the area, you suddenly had these neighborhood preservationists stepping up and trying to say, let's preserve this landmark that I'm personally, I want to work with both sides. I want us to come up with a win-win situation, but let's not lose sight of the big picture here. And this is a community that has many problems with violence and affordable housing and families leaving the city. Let's not stop a good project. Let us not lose 12 units of housing just to preserve this site. Thank you.
First of all, let me just say that this is not about the affordable housing, and this is not, and I appreciate your care about African Americans, but it didn't just start with affordable housing, and it's not about affordable housing. It's about a lot of other things. And this started long before that. It was never about either or. And that's what we're trying to get you to understand. It's not an either or, it's an and that's what we're trying to do. Both of these things need to be preserved. People need to understand that people did work in the area and they still need jobs. And they never came here. African Americans did not come here for affordable housing. We came here for economic development. And that's what you all need to talk about. I don't ever hear you talking about, anyway, let's go forward with this. Thank you.
Supervisors, Tony Kelly from Patrol Boosters Neighborhood Association. We've been in support of the landmarking of the site for many years. We've been in support of good planning for a number of years. And as far as we're concerned, both those goals are met by the landmarking of this site. What I guess I don't understand about the Tenderloin Housing Clinic's plans is are they asking to move forward to build the plan submitted by the previous developer?
Why don't we, Kelly, why don't we stick to 900 Ennis? Because that's what we're here to talk about. Well, that will be another conversation.
That's fair enough, but I do have one point to make. In that what bothers me, especially about what was just said, was that I'm not sure why the affordable housing needs to be the part on the chopping block. We've been working a lot in our neighborhood with planning about how to get more affordable housing in the neighborhood and how to see how we can do it with the minimum of market rate housing, of luxury housing. There's more than 100 units of unaffordable luxury housing in the previous owner's plans for this site. Why isn't it those units that are being sacrificed for the landmarking of the site, instead of specifically about the affordable units? Why are we pitting the neighborhood's affordable housing needs against the preservation, the historical preservation of the site, rather than going to maybe having just a little bit less profit out of more than 100 units of luxury housing on the site? Why can't this $500,000 number come out of that? That's where I would think we would go, and especially with a nonprofit getting the land for free and taking over the development on their own, you would think they would be able to be smart enough to figure that out. Nonprofit agencies operate in the public trust. That's a matter of federal law. It's how you get your nonprofit status. And I think the Tenderloin Housing Clinic needs to be reminded of that and of their specific mission about building affordable housing that is sensitive and responsive to the community, and so they should really be looking at that market rate housing in that previous plan about how they can accommodate this and be sensitive to the local communities around 900 Ennis. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony.
Madam Chair, maybe I can
yes.
jump in here for just a second. This is being cast and not incorrectly, so I think Tim Cullen said, what we have here is a case of potentially violent agreement. There are two laudable public interests that surround this site. One, a mixed use, including affordable housing development. The other, the preservation of a piece of the city's working class patrimony. I think the chair of the committee is right. These are not mutually exclusive. It is true that the India Basin neighbors have been pursuing this now for several years, and it is also true that the new owner has only had possession of the site for 3 or 4 months. It is also true that there is a planning process underway, and it's entirely, I think, speaking on behalf of this supervisor, I think we could do a very handsome community benefit project that would have affordable housing and a restored shipwrights cottage in place at the site. And I think it's very premature in the planning process relative to knowing how many units are being sacrificed, what the dollar value is. I think what I would like to see, if I could be so bold, is the India Basin neighbors and the Tenderloin Housing Clinic get off on the right foot with one another. Mr. Shaw stood up at the beginning and said, hey, he's not against the landmarking. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I think he's a little nervous about what it all portends. But I have seen many success stories come out of this. I mean, I remember on 19th Avenue 8 or 9 years ago, a knockdown, drag-out fight over the Shriners Hospital. It truly turned into, and by the way, most of that was a for-profit project. It did not have a nonprofit involved. It did not have a substantial affordable housing component. But neighbors, historic preservationists, and the city all benefited from that project, and I think the developer did quite well for themselves. So if we can, kind of keep that all in mind. I know this has a very contentious recent history prior to the current owner. I think that's a lot of water under the bridge, and I encourage the parties who are going to live and plan and implement together to see this really as a potential great thing for India Basin. And it's, to my mind, just given there's no development application been submitted to planning, there's been no environmental review, we still don't have all of the land use controls in place that are being developed. All of that is going to, I think, roll out together, and if you guys all figure out how to hold hands and make nice, it will be a project we'll all be proud of.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Amen. Supervisor Peskin, Angus McCarthy, member of the Residential Builders Association. I'll keep my comments quick. As somebody who was at the 2005 hearing for the landmark, one of the main concerns at that given time was that I don't think most of the people in the development room that time were against the landmarking. They were afraid that there was going to be a derailment of the project because of the landmarking. So, and that was then, this is now, and quite obviously, there probably was some bad dialogue going on, and whoever you want to spread that responsibility around, I'm sure you could. That said, there's a really unique opportunity with what's been happening here. And I'm here today to tell you I am for the landmarking. Quite obviously, I would like to see the 12 affordable. We will not go there, and I'm going to change my comments on that. I was going to talk about that. But at the end of the day, I think this coalition, this coexistence, what we're talking about existing. You guys have constantly preached over the years, and most of you seasoned veterans, to get the development community to do the right thing in communities. And this is a perfect case, and it's going to be very unique to see how it plays out. I'm disappointed when I hear Potrero Hill Boosters members coming up here and naysaying on a particularly good situation. It's almost like they need some sort of necessary evil to keep fighting or something. I mean, we have a good plan here in place where the developer, a non-profit, and may I say the Galvin Projects is probably one of the great successes in this town. It's not talked about, but this could probably fall in that category as one of the other great successes. So it's a win-win. I actually think the biggest challenge here is going to be what's in front of you guys, is to trying to get everybody to understand that this is one of those ideal situations. And, the perfect storm is here in front of you. And you better, if you're going to take advantage of it, now is the time. As a developer and builder, and we preach to our members, if we see an historic building in most of our streets, we run to the other side of the street. We're terrified of them. We don't want to be involved in, taking away positive things from communities, because they do, and they are important to communities. I come from a little town in Galway, and I'll leave it at this. It's the west of Ireland, and it's gone one of the fastest growing cities in Europe, Galway, and it has done a fabulous job in coexisting with the old and the new. Is it perfect? No. Is it heated, debated? Yes. But they agree on one thing, that they must come together and get the fairest compromise. And San Francisco represents Galway just like that. So anything we can do as a Residential Builders Association, we will. And we wish the community good luck, and I hope they keep their business hats on and keep the emotions low, because that's what's really going to drive this. This is business at the end of the day, and the Randy Shaw is going to have a great project there, and it's all going to work out best for the community. That's the Land of Milk and Honey talk. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm not calling any more cards, so if you'd like to come up and speak, just come up.
My name is Nathaniel Engels. I live up the street from 900 NS, and I'm a member of the Indian Basin Neighborhood Association. Jobs and economic development will be the result of landmarking this building. People will come to see and visit this building for generations to come. They will bring with them the need for a variety of services, providing far more long-term employment than a few short-lived construction jobs that will primarily go to outsiders. People will not come to look at yet another condo complex, especially if it blocks the waterfront. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, www.nationaltrust.org/primer/advantages, preservation is better business than new construction. A study shows that $1 million spent on rehabilitation will create more jobs and keep more money in the local economy than the same $1 million spent on new construction. Preservation is actually a good business, and a big one. A recent travel industry survey found that 40% of Americans made visiting a historic place, a building, battlefield, or historic community part of their vacations, and that these people spent nearly 40% more than the typical traveler. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Everett, and I support landmarking 900 Innis. And I wanted to say first, thank you, Supervisor Maxwell and Peskin, for the way you're framing this. I think it's important very important to keep in mind this is a win-win situation. And although we know there's lots of affordable housing being planned in the area, let's keep our eye on the ball, as you said, which this is about preserving this site. And to that end, I want to make 2 points. One is, I come from a working class background. My dad's a garbage collector. His father's a plumber. And as the world's changing so fast, it's so important to preserve the past and our working class heritage. A lot of people have talked about this, but I just feel it's really important to reiterate. Yeah, a lot of people came to this area for jobs. Secondly, I feel it's really important to remember that moving the building is a bad idea, as a lot of people have mentioned. So I just feel like that shouldn't even be on the table. If we move the building, for one thing, it's not going to be listed in the National Registry, and that can affect tourism. So I just think it's important to keep that in mind. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Supervisors. Alex Landsberg, neighbor living down the street. I wanted to address a few of the points that were brought up over here. First of all, the idea of 12 units. I know that we're not going to be talking about affordable housing, but I think that sort of exists in the imagination of an architect who decided to fill out a building envelope and never actually bothered checking the planning code. So because, as Supervisor Peskin said, there is really nothing tangible in terms of an application, what I think is really important, and this was mentioned once, Supervisor Maxwell mentioned it in her amendment, there's a community planning process. Christine Anea and I met with Mr. Shaw shortly after we learned in the newspaper that Mr. Cassidy donated the property to Tenderloin Housing Clinic. And I think what we tried to get across, and I'm not sure whether it necessarily got across, it certainly doesn't seem as though it did here, is that we do welcome working families into the community. We're taking an extraordinarily large amount of time out of our lives to participate in this community planning process to really make sure that development writ large is accommodated in India Basin. And I think as a trained planner and clearly as someone who lives in the neighborhood, what you do is you plan around history. You declare these sites to be sacrosanct in a certain point, and then you move forward and you figure out how you achieve these larger development goals within the context of what exists in the neighborhood. And I think that that's really important in addressing what's going on with the tapestry of our neighborhood. The last point that I think I want to bring up is we had a few folks from Acorn come out and briefly touch on the points that we're addressing here, and we want to invite them to participate in the Area C planning process. I think or the Hunters Point Shoreline planning process. I'm sorry, I'm getting to But I think it's really critical that we get as many voices to the table as possible, and that we do somehow step back from this area of violent agreement, in which I guess we can thank Supervisor Peskin for introducing that term to us, and making sure that we get to a point where we non-violently agree with one another. And last point, I think this is something that Supervisor Sandoval said in our last go-around on this thing. When you started working to landmark the mural up by People's Park, I think I don't know whether anybody proposed the idea of moving it or not, but in many cases, a lot of these historical landmarks, especially ones that are really representative of an era and representative of a time that's long gone, not just simply architecture, are so site-specific. They are so important for the context of the greater neighborhood that moving them, ripping them out of that context, I think devalues the history that's there, and ultimately the neighborhood in which they're going. So I want to urge you all to move forward with sending this to the full board with your recommendation, and we look forward to seeing THC in the Hunters Point shoreline planning process.
Hello, Supervisors. Julian Davis. I work in various capacities on economic development and advocating for affordable housing and trying to develop affordable housing here in San Francisco. I'll keep my comments brief just because I don't want to be too repetitive, but I would just say on the heels of Market Octavia, which is a step forward but also falling short of some of your own stated affordable housing goals, that if you have a developer who comes along and wants to build 50% affordable housing without any city money, that is something that should be facilitated and shepherded in a way where everybody's interests are at the table. I think you're doing a good job of shepherding that. I would just ask you continue to shepherd and facilitate that so that it does become a win-win, so that you can have a restored site that actually generates potentially some economic development in the area, as well as building as much affordable housing as possible. As well as anyone that we need it. So, thank you.
Sean Keegren, RBA. Today we have an opportunity for a 2-for-1 special. You get the opportunity to acknowledge the past, acknowledge a group that helped forge our industry, the shipping industry, which ultimately made San Franciscans who we are. The trick is to do so in a way that we don't boycott other groups from having a similar opportunity. The ship workers were allowed to forge or create their impact because they had housing opportunities. When you look at our housing policies today, you look downtown, you see towers. That addresses a certain housing needs. Other groups need the same opportunities, and let's make sure they're allowed the same opportunity to, whether it's an artistic vision, whether it's industrial, whatever the case may be, we'll all have our opportunities. And I think you've got that here today. Joe Boss threw out their contributions, and I appreciate him extending the offer to the RBA, but I'd like to remind Joe that it was one of our members that made the original contribution, and he mentioned other groups, and when those other groups have fulfilled their wishes, and perhaps we could add another group to it, he was involved in a project on Townsend Street in which he received a bunch of money for community impacts, and I understand some of that went to his wife, but perhaps he can add his own group to that group. And after those groups have gone through, the RBA will gladly come back for a second round. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Dan Dote, Bayview resident. I won't make any personal accusations to anyone.
Appreciate that.
But I'd like, again, to just reiterate what Christopher Plank said earlier, an architectural historian, which is that moving the building would significantly discount its historic value. I think that should really just be off the table completely. Discussion of housing, while a worthy cause, is certainly not the basis for your committee today, and you've said so. I appreciate that. But there are powerful forces, Acorn, in support of affordable housing and similar developments throughout the city. And I think that's good. But I'd like to speak a little truth to that power. The developer himself owns the argument in favor of his vision for his inherited site, and he seems to be struggling with himself over it. But I'll join the IBNA chorus to say, join us. Please don't argue with us about it. We want to embrace your vision, but you also need to understand that the work that's been going on there It's been going on for decades. Smart developments, on the other hand, housing developments, I think should occur on transit corridors. Let's say the T-line, a corridor that has had a $600 million investment of transit. 3rd Street is aching for affordable housing and mixed unit housing developments. Think about 3rd Street. I also question the density of such a development on this site. It's about 2 acres total. Half of it's underwater. And to put 170 to 200 units per acre is quadruple the density that is outlined in the redevelopment plan, for instance. Quadruple. How do you do that? You go up 10 stories? I don't know. I don't know the math either, but I'd like to figure it out. Contrary to some of the press about the site, there is community support and community-wide support for historic preservation, access to the waterfront, and open space. And again, this work has gone on for decades around India Basin. It started before the shipyard closed in model cities in the 70s under the Alioto administration. It continued in the new Bayview Committee in the mid and early 80s. I was involved then. There's a vision in the concept plan for redevelopment about what can occur on Innis Avenue, the open space, the water access, and in the Bayview development plan, redevelopment plan, passed in 2006. Also consensus about what should occur there. I believe it was 2007, actually. So this is not news to us. It may be to the developer. Certainly not to us. And again, I think what happened 2 weeks ago is also crucial to understand. You had a broad cross-section of the Bayview here. Espinola Jackson, Al Norman, leaders for decades who stood together and who need to say to you and to the developer, the Bayview is organized, we're coordinated, and we are positive about what can happen in this community. And we say to the developer, join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment on this issue? All right, seeing none, then public comment is closed. Colleagues, can we pass the amendments?
Yeah, and yes, I'm happy to vote for the finding that you read into the record as well as the other changes. And let me just say that I think that finding is kind of an expression of what I was talking about and Supervisor Maxwell was talking about. It's an expression that a mixed-use housing project is contemplated, that a planning process is underway, and that there is, by the Board of Supervisors, an acknowledgement of that and a desire that both of these things go forward together. I think the finding is the appropriate vehicle, and I support it.
Thank you. Any further comments? Then the amendments without objection, so moved. And then the legislation as amended without objection, so moved. Right. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, that's it, folks. All right, thank you. Then this will move forward to the full board as amended with recommendation to approve. All right, thank you. Madam Clerk.